With a brilliant medical mind hidden beneath a maid's uniform, Amara Brooks scrubs blood from marble floors while Korea's most feared crime boss lies dying upstairs, his billion-dollar empire crumbling as 25 renowned doctors admit defeat against a condition she recognizes but dare not reveal she can treat. The crimson stains had become a daily ritual. Amara Brooks knelt on the pristine white marble of Kim Tae-jun's penthouse foyer, her cleaning cloth moving in methodical circles as she removed yet another trail of blood drops. 24 years old, she had been cleaning these floors for 8 months now, watching medical experts track their failure through the estate's gleaming corridors. Each crimson spot told the same story. Korea's most powerful crime boss was dying, and no one could save him. She dipped her cloth in the bucket of bleach water, the sharp scent burning her nostrils as she worked. Her natural hair was pulled back in a simple bun, covered by the plain white head wrap all household staff wore in the Kim estate. The shapeless gray uniform disguised her tall frame, made her invisible among the small army of servants who maintained this fortress of wealth and power. That invisibility had kept her alive for 8 months. That invisibility was both her protection and her prison. The sound of expensive shoes echoing through the marble hallway made her pause. Dr. Park emerged from the private elevator, his face grim as he adjusted his designer briefcase. The 25th doctor in 6 weeks. Like all the others, he walked with the defeated posture of a man who had just pronounced a death sentence. Amara kept her eyes down, continuing her cleaning as he passed, but her ears caught every word of his hushed conversation with Young Min-sik, Kim Tae-jun's underboss. "Your boss has maybe 6 hours left," Dr. Park said quietly. "The internal hemorrhaging is beyond our control. His platelet count is catastrophic, and we cannot identify the exact cause of the bleeding disorder. I am sorry, but we have exhausted all conventional treatments." Amara's hand stilled on the marble. Platelet dysfunction with arterial hemorrhaging. Unresponsive to standard protocols. She had heard these exact symptoms described 17 times in the past month by different specialists. Her pulse quickened as her mind automatically began cataloging the possibilities. In her head, she could see the medical textbooks from Johns Hopkins, the pages she had memorized during her pre-med years. The symptoms pointed to a rare variant of thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, possibly complicated by an autoimmune component. The treatment was complex, but not impossible. Plasmapheresis combined with immunosuppressive therapy started immediately. But Amara Brooks was not Dr. Amara Brooks anymore. That life had ended 18 months ago when her father's gambling addiction had destroyed everything she had worked for. $2 million in debt to loan sharks. Her medical school dreams shattered. Her family forced into hiding. Her brilliant mind now trapped in the body of a servant, cleaning up the blood of a man she could save. She resumed scrubbing as Dr. Park left, his footsteps fading toward the estate's main entrance. Above her, she could hear the low murmur of voices from Kim Tae-jun's private medical suite. More consultations. More failure. The man who controlled Seoul's pharmaceutical distribution network, who commanded an empire worth billions, who could make rivals disappear with a single phone call, was helpless against his own failing body. Amara had never seen Kim Tae-jun up close. The household staff were strictly forbidden from the executive floors during his medical treatments. But she had heard enough whispered conversations among the guards and assistants to piece together the story. 36 years old, head of the Kim family syndicate for 8 years, had built a legitimate pharmaceutical empire as a front for his criminal operations. Brilliant, ruthless, and completely in control of everything except the mysterious blood disorder that was slowly killing him. The elevator chimed again, and Young Min-sik stepped out, his expression grave. He pulled out his encrypted phone and began making calls in rapid Korean. Amara's understanding of the language had improved during her months in the estate, enough to catch the key phrases. Succession planning, asset protection, final arrangements. Her chest tightened as the reality sank in. They were preparing for Kim Tae-jun's death. She finished cleaning the foyer and moved to the adjoining hallway, her cart of supplies rolling quietly across the marble. The estate was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all clean lines and expensive materials. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Seoul's skyline. Custom furniture worth more than most people's houses. Original artwork that belonged in museums. Every surface spoke of wealth beyond imagination, yet none of it could buy the one thing Kim Tae-jun needed most: a cure. Amara paused at the air vent near the private elevator bank. During her months of cleaning, she had discovered that the ventilation system carried sound from the upper floors. It was here that she had first heard the parade of medical consultations, the increasingly desperate attempts to diagnose and treat Kim Tae-jun's condition. She told herself she was not eavesdropping intentionally. The voices simply carried, and her medical training made it impossible to ignore. Today, the discussion was between Young Min-sik and Dr. Lee, the estate's permanent physician. "We have tried everything," Dr. Lee said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Corticosteroids, immunoglobulin therapy, platelet transfusions, even experimental treatments from Switzerland. Nothing works. The bleeding episodes are becoming more severe and frequent. His body is not responding to any conventional intervention." "What about the American doctors?" Young Min-sik asked. "The specialists from Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic." "They agreed with our assessment," Dr. Lee replied. "This variant of the blood disorder is extremely rare. Maybe one case in 10 million. Without understanding the exact mechanism causing the platelet dysfunction, we are treating blindly. And time has run out." Amara's breath caught. Johns Hopkins, her former medical school. She could picture Dr. Harrison, her hematology professor, lecturing about rare blood disorders. Could see herself in the front row, frantically taking notes, asking the questions that made other students roll their eyes. Dr. Harrison had always said she had an intuitive grasp of complex medical puzzles, an ability to see patterns that others missed. She knew exactly what was wrong with Kim Tae-jun, and she knew how to fix it. The realization hit her like a physical blow. For 8 months, she had cleaned blood from these floors while a man died upstairs from a completely treatable condition. Her silence had not protected anyone. It had only prolonged his suffering. But revealing her knowledge would be suicide. The Kim household staff lived under strict surveillance. Any deviation from assigned duties was investigated. Anyone who demonstrated unusual knowledge or skills was considered a security risk. She had seen 3 servants dismissed in her time here, escorted from the grounds with black bags over their heads. No one knew what happened to them after that. Yet Kim Tae-jun was dying. In 6 hours, according to Dr. Park. And after his death would come the succession war, the violent struggle for control of his empire. The staff who had served in his private quarters, who had heard his conversations, who knew his weaknesses, would be eliminated to prevent security leaks. Her invisibility would not save her then. Amara straightened slowly, her mind racing through the impossible calculation. Stay silent and die when Kim Tae-jun's enemies came for witnesses. Speak up and die for knowing too much. Either way, her father's debt would remain unpaid, her family would stay in hiding, and her medical knowledge would die with her. Unless she could save the one man powerful enough to protect them all. The elevator chimed, and she quickly resumed cleaning, her heart hammering against her ribs. Young Min-sik emerged with 2 other men in expensive suits, their faces grim as they headed toward the estate's security center. She caught fragments of their conversation as they passed. "Prepare the cleanup protocols," Young Min-sik said quietly. "When this is over, anyone who was present during the final days needs to be relocated. Permanently." Amara's hands trembled as she wrung out her cleaning cloth. Relocated. The euphemism sent ice through her veins. She was already on the list of people who knew too much. Her death warrant had been signed the moment she started working in Kim Tae-jun's private quarters. She had nothing left to lose. And maybe, just maybe, everything to gain. For the first time in 8 months, Amara Brooks allowed herself to remember who she had been before the uniform and the head wrap. Before the debt and the hiding. She had been a woman who could solve medical puzzles that stumped entire teams of specialists. A woman who had scored in the top 1% of her medical school entrance exams. A woman who had dreamed of saving lives. Tonight, she would find out if that woman still existed. Above her, through the ventilation system, she heard Young Min-sik's voice one final time. "Prepare for succession. Your boss will not see dawn." Amara Brooks stared at the cleaning supplies in her cart, her mind racing through the impossible equation that would determine whether she lived or died in the next few hours. The estate around her hummed with quiet activity as guards changed shifts and medical equipment was wheeled away from Kim Tae-jun's suite. Each sound felt amplified, each moment stretching toward the inevitable decision she could no longer avoid. She had sworn the Hippocratic Oath in her mind 1,000 times during her pre-med years at Johns Hopkins. First, do no harm. But what did that mean when inaction would result in death? When her silence would kill not just the patient upstairs, but herself and potentially her family as well. Her hands shook as she gripped the handle of her cleaning cart, knuckles white against the metal. The weight of her hidden past pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. 18 months ago, she had been Amara Brooks, third-year pre-med student with a 3.97 GPA and acceptance letters from residency programs across the country. She had been 22 years old with the world spread out before her like a map of infinite possibilities. Her apartment near campus had been filled with medical textbooks, her walls covered with anatomical charts and molecular diagrams. She had dreamed of emergency medicine, of saving lives in crisis situations where seconds mattered and knowledge was the difference between death and recovery. That life had ended on a Tuesday afternoon when her father called, his voice thick with shame and terror. Marcus Brooks had always been a gentle man, a high school mathematics teacher who balanced equations with the same precision he applied to everything in life. But behind his quiet demeanor had lurked an addiction that none of them knew existed. Horse racing, basketball games, poker tournaments. For 3 years, he had fed an ever-growing monster with borrowed money and desperate hope. $2 million. That was what the loan sharks said he owed when they finally came to collect. $2 million in accumulated debt, compound interest, and penalties for late payment. The men who visited their family home had not been interested in negotiation. They wanted payment in full within 60 days, or they would take equivalent value in other forms. Her mother's art studio would be sold. Their house would be confiscated. And if that was not enough, well, they had noticed that Marcus Brooks had a very promising daughter whose medical degree would be quite valuable in certain specialized markets. The threat had been clear. Pay the debt or Amara would disappear into a world where her medical skills would serve masters who did not care about her consent. Her family had scattered within a week. Her mother had moved to a women's shelter in Ohio under an assumed name. Her father had taken a construction job in Alaska, sending every dollar back to slowly chip away at the enormous debt. And Amara had dropped out of Johns Hopkins 6 credits short of her bachelor's degree, abandoning her medical school acceptance and her dreams to take any work that paid enough to keep the collectors at bay. 18 months of waitressing, house cleaning, and finally this position in the Kim estate. $400,000 was still owed on the original debt. At her current salary, even living like a monk and sending every penny home, it would take 8 more years to clear their obligations. 8 years of hiding, of denying her education, of pretending to be someone she was not. But tonight, all of that seemed irrelevant. Because Young Minseek had made it clear that witnesses to Kim Tae-jun's final days would be eliminated. Her years of careful invisibility meant nothing if the man upstairs died. She would be relocated permanently along with everyone else who had seen too much. The cruel irony burned in her chest. She was going to die because she knew too much about Kim Tae-jun's medical condition. But she was also the only person in this building who knew how to save his life. Amara abandoned her cleaning cart in the hallway and walked to the service elevator reserved for household staff. Her badge, coded for access to all floors during night cleaning hours, would get her into Kim Tae-jun's private medical suite 1 floor above. Her hands were steady now, her mind crystallizing around the decision that felt both inevitable and impossible. If she stayed silent, Kim Tae-jun would die, and she would follow shortly after. If she revealed her medical knowledge, she would either save his life and potentially her own, or she would die for the crime of knowing too much. But at least if she acted, there was a chance. A slim, desperate chance that her medical training might be worth more to Kim Tae-jun alive than her silence was worth dead. The elevator climbed silently to the executive floor, its polished brass doors opening onto a hallway that felt different from the rest of the estate. Thicker carpeting muffled sound. Recessed lighting created pools of warm illumination. Original paintings worth millions hung on walls that few people ever saw. This was where Seoul's most dangerous man lived when he was not orchestrating criminal empires or pharmaceutical mergers. The medical suite occupied the southeast corner of the floor, its double doors flanked by 2 guards in expensive suits. Amara had never been this close to Kim Tae-jun's private quarters before. Her cleaning duties normally kept her on the lower floors, maintaining the public spaces where business was conducted and guests were entertained. But her building access was comprehensive, a necessity for the overnight cleaning staff who worked when the executive floors were supposedly empty. The guards looked up as she approached, their expressions shifting from boredom to alert suspicion. One of them, a thick-set man with scars across his knuckles, stepped forward to block her path. "Staff areas are restricted during medical treatments," he said curtly. "Return to your assigned floor." Amara felt her throat tighten, but forced herself to meet his gaze. "I need to see Kim Tae-jun," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I have medical training. I can help him." The guard's expression hardened into something dangerous. "You need to leave. Now, before this becomes a problem." From behind the doors came a sound that made Amara's medical training override every instinct for self-preservation. It was the wet, gasping sound of someone drowning in their own blood. The sound of massive internal hemorrhaging, of airways filling with fluid, of a body in the final stages of catastrophic organ failure. "He is bleeding out," she said urgently, stepping toward the doors. "The platelet dysfunction is causing arterial hemorrhaging. Without immediate plasmapheresis, he will be dead within the hour. I know how to perform the procedure." The second guard had drawn his weapon, holding it low but ready. "You are a cleaning woman," he said coldly. "You know nothing about medical procedures." "I graduated from Johns Hopkins pre-med program," Amara said desperately. "I was 6 credits away from medical school when my family situation forced me to leave. Check my background. Check my transcripts. But do it quickly, because your boss is dying of a treatable condition while we argue." The scarred guard spoke rapidly into his earpiece, reporting the situation to someone higher in the security hierarchy. Amara could hear the wet breathing from inside the medical suite getting worse, more labored. Her medical instincts screamed at her to push past the guards, to demand access to a patient who needed immediate intervention. But the weapons in their hands reminded her that this was not a hospital, and she was not here as a doctor. The doors to the medical suite opened from within, and Jung Min-sik stepped out, his face grim with exhaustion and barely controlled panic. He looked at Amara with eyes that held no recognition, seeing only another household employee who had somehow gained access to a restricted area. "Sir," the guard with the weapon reported, "this staff member claims to have medical training. She says she can help Kim Tae-jun." Jung Min-sik studied Amara's face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Behind him, through the open doorway, she could see into the medical suite for the first time. Banks of monitoring equipment lined the walls. For poles held bags of blood products and medications. And in the center of it all, on a hospital bed that looked completely out of place in the luxurious surroundings, lay Kim Tae-jun. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow and labored. His skin had the waxy pallor of massive blood loss, and she could see crimson staining the sheets around him despite what appeared to be recent attempts at cleaning. Electronic monitors showed heart rhythm patterns that made her stomach clench with professional alarm. This man was minutes away from complete cardiovascular collapse. "What medical training?" Jung Min-sik asked quietly. "Johns Hopkins University, pre-med program, graduating class of 2023, Amara said quickly. "I specialized in hematology and emergency medicine. I have seen this exact condition before. It is a rare variant of thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura. The treatment protocol requires immediate therapeutic plasma exchange using a specialized machine that can be improvised from components available in this building." Jung Min-sik's eyes sharpened with something that might have been hope. 25 doctors have examined him," he said. "None of them suggested this treatment." "Because none of them recognized the specific variant," Amara replied. "It presents differently from classical TTP. The platelet aggregation pattern is unusual, and standard testing does not catch the autoimmune component. But I wrote my senior thesis on this exact condition. I know how to treat it." A monitor inside the room began beeping frantically, indicating another drop in blood pressure. Jung Min-sik glanced back at the readings, his jaw tightening with decision. "If you are lying," he said quietly, "if this is some kind of elaborate con or assassination attempt, you will die very slowly and very painfully." "I understand," Amara said. "But if I do nothing, Kim Tae-jun will be dead in 30 minutes, and then you will kill me anyway for knowing too much." At least this way, there is a chance. Young Minsik stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter the medical suite. The guards followed, weapons still drawn, but they no longer blocked her path. Inside the room, Kim Taejun lay motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest. Up close, Amara could see that he was younger than she had expected, probably in his late 30s, with sharp features that spoke of intelligence and control even in unconsciousness. His dark hair was damp with sweat, and his skin had the translucent quality that came with severe anemia. Blood pressure readings on the monitors showed dangerously low numbers that were dropping steadily. But even as she approached the bed, his eyes opened. Dark brown, alert despite his physical distress, they tracked to her face with startling intensity. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried absolute authority. "Who are you?" he asked. "Amara Brooks," she said, moving to check his pulse points. "I am here to save your life." Kim Taejun studied her face for a long moment, his eyes taking in details that most people would miss. When he spoke again, blood flecked his lips, but his voice was stronger. "Do what the others could not." Amara Brooks had 30 minutes to accomplish what 25 renowned doctors had declared impossible. As Kim Taejun's eyes closed again, his breathing becoming more labored, she pushed aside 18 months of hiding and let her Johns Hopkins medical training take control. "I need specific equipment," she said to young Minsik, her voice shifting into the crisp authority she had once used in hospital simulations. "A centrifuge from your pharmaceutical laboratory for tubing, saline bags, and access to Kim Taejun's blood type reserves. Also, bring me the espresso machine from his private kitchen." Young Minsik stared at her. "The espresso machine? It has a high-pressure pump system that can be modified for plasma separation," Amara explained, already moving to examine the force setup around Kim Taejun's bed. "I am going to perform therapeutic plasma exchange using improvised equipment. His blood needs to be cycled through a separation process that removes the antibodies causing the platelet dysfunction." The security guards exchanged uncertain glances, but young Minsik was already speaking rapidly into his phone. Within minutes, estate staff began arriving with the requested items. Amara watched Kim Taejun's monitor readings as she worked, noting the steadily declining blood pressure and increasingly irregular heartbeat. His body was shutting down, organ by organ, as his blood lost the ability to clot properly. She had perhaps 15 minutes before irreversible damage occurred. The pharmaceutical laboratory equipment arrived first, wheeled in by technicians who looked confused but followed orders without question. Amara's hands moved with practiced precision as she began assembling an improvised plasmapheresis machine using the centrifuge, modified tubing from the espresso machine's pressure system, and a complex network of 4 lines that would allow her to extract Kim Taejun's blood, separate the plasma containing the harmful antibodies, and return the clean blood components to his body. It was a procedure normally performed by specialized medical equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. She was attempting it with kitchen appliances and laboratory gear, guided by theoretical knowledge and desperate determination. As she connected the final components, Kim Taejun's eyes opened again. His gaze found her face, studying her with an intensity that seemed impossible given his physical condition. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible but perfectly clear. "What is your real name?" he asked. "Amara Brooks," she replied, inserting a large-bore 4 catheter into his arm. "I was a pre-med student at Johns Hopkins University before circumstances forced me to become your cleaning lady." His lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "And now you are attempting to save my life with improvised medical equipment." "Yes," she said simply, beginning the blood extraction process. "Try to stay conscious if possible. I need to monitor your responses to the treatment." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of medical precision and mounting tension. Amara cycled Kim Taejun's blood through her improvised system, carefully monitoring the separation of plasma components and watching for signs of improvement in his clotting function. The process was delicate, requiring constant adjustments to pressure and flow rates while maintaining perfect sterility to prevent infection. Young Minsik remained in the room throughout, coordinating with security while keeping one eye on the monitors that displayed Kim Taejun's vital signs. The estate's regular physician, Dr. Lee, arrived 2 hours into the procedure and watched in amazement as the readings began to stabilize. This should not be working, Dr. Lee muttered, studying the blood work results that showed gradually improving platelet function. The equipment she is using is completely improvised. But it was working. Hour by hour, Kim Tae-jun's color improved as his blood regained the ability to clot properly. The internal bleeding that had been slowly killing him began to slow, then stop entirely. His blood pressure stabilized. His breathing became deeper and more regular, and the monitors stopped their frantic alarms. By dawn, Kim Tae-jun was conscious and alert, sitting up in bed with an expression of sharp intelligence that reminded everyone in the room exactly who they were dealing with. The man who controlled Seoul's pharmaceutical distribution network, who commanded loyalty through a combination of fear and respect, who could end lives with a gesture, was studying Amara Brooks as if she were a puzzle he intended to solve completely. "You succeeded where 25 experts failed," he said, his voice stronger now though still hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed an hour earlier. "I want to know everything about you. Your education, your family, your debts, and why a woman with your skills was cleaning my floors instead of practicing medicine." Young Min-sik had anticipated the request. He produced a tablet containing a comprehensive background report compiled by the estate's security team during the medical procedure. As Kim Tae-jun read through her academic records, financial history, and family circumstances, his expression remained carefully neutral. But Amara could see his mind working, processing implications and possibilities with the same precision he applied to business decisions. Johns Hopkins University, pre-medical studies, graduated magna cum laude, he read aloud. Specialization in hematology and emergency medicine. Senior thesis on rare blood disorders, specifically thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura variants. Medical school acceptance to Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and Stanford. Academic scholarship recipient. He looked up at her with eyes that missed nothing. "Your father owes $2 million to loan sharks. Your family scattered to avoid collection. You have been working as household staff for 18 months to pay down the debt. 400,000 still outstanding." Amara met his gaze steadily. "Yes, that is correct. And last night, you risked your life to save mine. Even though revealing your medical knowledge put you in danger of being eliminated as a security risk." "Yes," she said again. Kim Tae-jun set down the tablet and studied her face for a long moment. The morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast sharp shadows across his features, highlighting the intelligence and dangerous charisma that had built his empire. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "You have given me something 25 renowned doctors could not," he said. "You have given me my life. In my world, such a debt is not taken lightly." Dr. Lee, who had been quietly running confirmatory blood tests throughout the morning, approached the bed with obvious amazement. "Sir, her treatment was completely successful. Your platelet function has returned to normal ranges. The antibody levels that were causing the clotting disorder have dropped to undetectable levels. It is medically impossible, but she has cured a condition that we declared untreatable." Kim Tae-jun nodded without surprise, as if he had expected no less once he had decided to trust Amara's expertise. The validation from his personal physician was useful confirmation, but his sharp mind had already processed the evidence of his recovery. What interested him more was the woman who had made it possible. "Young Min-sik," he said, his tone shifting into business mode. "Clear Miss Brooks' family debt immediately. All of it. Transfer the funds from my personal accounts." "Sir," Young Min-sik began, but Kim Tae-jun cut him off with a gesture. "Also, arrange for comprehensive background verification with Johns Hopkins University. I want her academic transcripts, professor recommendations, and medical aptitude scores confirmed independently. Contact our people in Baltimore and have them conduct interviews with faculty members who knew her." As Young Min-sik made notes on his phone, Kim Tae-jun turned back to Amara. "Your debt is cleared," he said. "Your family can come out of hiding. But I have a proposition for you that goes far beyond simple gratitude." Amara felt her pulse quicken. She had known this moment would come, had understood that saving Kim Tae-jun's life would change everything between them. A man like him did not accept charity or allow debts to remain unpaid. Whatever he was about to offer would bind her to him in ways that went far beyond her current employment as household staff. "I need a personal physician," Kim Tae-jun continued, his dark eyes holding her gaze. "Someone with your expertise, someone I can trust completely, someone who understands the unique medical challenges of my position. The work would involve treating associates who cannot seek traditional medical care, maintaining absolute discretion about business activities, and being available for emergency medical situations 24 hours a day. The offer hung in the air between them like a bridge across a chasm. Amara understood the implications immediately. He was not offering her a job. He was offering her a place in his inner circle, a position of trust and responsibility that came with both protection and danger. She would be trading her anonymity for security, her freedom for purpose. What would the terms be? She asked. $500,000 annually. Kim Tae-jun replied without hesitation. Full medical school tuition paid, with arrangements made for you to complete your degree through accelerated programs while working. Your family receives permanent protection and financial security. You live on the estate in private quarters with full staff privileges. And in return, absolute loyalty, complete discretion, your medical skills at my exclusive disposal, and understanding that once you accept this position, you become part of my world permanently. There is no leaving, no resignation, no retirement. You would belong to the Kim family for life. Before Amara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the estate. Security guards rushed past the medical suite windows, speaking rapidly into their communications devices. Young Min-sik's phone erupted with urgent calls as the building's defense systems activated. Kim Tae-jun listened to the reports with calm attention, though Amara could see the sharp calculation in his eyes. The rival Choi family had chosen this moment to test his defenses, launching an assassination attempt while they believed he was weak and possibly dying. 3 teams of armed men had breached the estate's outer perimeter, moving toward the main building with military precision. It was a perfectly timed attack, based on intelligence that Kim Tae-jun was on his deathbed and his organization was preparing for a succession crisis. What the Choi family did not know was that their target was not only alive but fully recovered, and that his apparent weakness had been replaced by renewed strength and clarity. The attack was repelled within 20 minutes, but the message was clear. Kim Tae-jun's enemies would continue targeting anyone they perceived as important to him. His recovery would not end the attempts on his life, it would only escalate them. And now, by saving him, Amara had made herself a target as well. As the estate's security teams conducted sweeps and filed reports, Kim Tae-jun made a phone call that would change Amara's life forever. When he finished, he looked at her with eyes that held both gratitude and possession. "Miss Brooks," he said formally, "I am placing you under my direct personal protection. Anyone who threatens you will answer to me personally. Your quarters are being prepared in the executive wing of the estate. Your family will be relocated to secure housing under Kim family protection. And your new position as my personal physician begins immediately." Amara realized that her choice had been made the moment she decided to save his life. There was no going back to her old existence, no returning to invisibility or anonymity. She had revealed her true capabilities to one of Seoul's most dangerous men, and he had decided she was too valuable to ever let go. But as she looked at Kim Tae-jun, seeing the intelligence and unexpected kindness beneath his dangerous reputation, she found herself accepting her new reality with something that felt surprisingly like relief. For 18 months, she had hidden her medical knowledge, denied her education, and lived as someone she was not. Now, finally, she could be Dr. Amara Brooks again, even if it meant belonging to Kim Tae-jun for the rest of her life. 3 days after saving Kim Tae-jun's life, Amara Brooks found herself seated across from him in his private office, watching as he reviewed her academic transcripts with the same methodical precision he applied to business acquisitions. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of Seoul's skyline, but her attention remained focused on the man who now held her future in his hands. The office itself spoke of wealth beyond imagination. Custom mahogany furniture crafted by European artisans. Original paintings worth millions hanging on walls lined with first-edition medical texts and pharmaceutical industry journals. A jade sculpture that belonged in a museum serving as a paperweight on his desk. Every surface reflected the dual nature of Kim Tae-jun's empire. Legitimate pharmaceutical business layered over criminal enterprise. Medical records covered his desk like pieces of a complex puzzle. Her Johns Hopkins transcripts, professor recommendations, aptitude test scores, and research papers on rare blood disorders. Jung Minseek had been thorough in his background verification, conducting interviews with faculty members who remembered her academic brilliance and confirming every detail of her educational history. Your professors describe you as exceptional, Kim Tae-jun said, setting down her organic chemistry grades with obvious satisfaction. Dr. Harrison from the hematology department called your understanding of blood disorders intuitive and unprecedented for an undergraduate student. Dr. Chin noted that your diagnostic capabilities exceeded those of many residents. Amara shifted in the leather chair, still adjusting to being treated as a valued professional rather than invisible household staff. The transformation had been jarring. 3 days ago, she had worn a gray uniform and clean blood from marble floors. Today, she sat in expensive clothes provided by Kim Tae-jun's personal stylist, discussing her academic achievements with one of Seoul's most powerful men. They also mentioned your family's financial crisis, Kim Tae-jun continued, his dark eyes holding her gaze. Your father's gambling addiction and the subsequent debt that forced you to abandon medical school 6 credits short of graduation. $2 million owed to loan sharks who threatened your safety if payment was not made. The debt has been cleared, as you promised, Amara replied. My family called yesterday to confirm the transfers. For the first time in 18 months, they can stop hiding. Kim Tae-jun nodded, but his expression remained serious. Clearing the debt was simple gratitude for saving my life. What I am offering now goes far beyond repayment. I am offering you a position that will utilize your medical expertise while providing security and opportunity that extends for the rest of your life. He stood and moved to a wall safe hidden behind one of the medical texts, retrieving a folder containing documents that looked distinctly official. When he returned to his desk, his demeanor had shifted from grateful patient to commanding businessman making a strategic proposal. I need a personal physician, he said, opening the folder to reveal a formal employment contract. Someone with your specific expertise in rare blood disorders and emergency medicine. Someone I can trust completely with medical information that could be used against me by enemies. Someone willing to provide medical care for associates who cannot seek treatment through conventional channels. Amara felt her pulse quicken as she understood the implications. He was not offering her a typical medical position. He was asking her to become complicit in his criminal enterprise, to treat people injured in violent conflicts, to maintain silence about activities that existed outside legal boundaries. The terms are comprehensive, Kim Tae-jun continued, sliding the contract across his desk. $500,000 annually, paid in monthly installments to accounts established in your name. Complete medical school tuition for accelerated programs that will allow you to earn your MD while working. Housing in a private wing of this estate, with full security and staff privileges. Medical equipment budget of $2 million annually for whatever specialized gear you require. The numbers were staggering. $500,000 was more than most doctors earned after decades of practice. The tuition coverage would eliminate the financial barriers that had forced her to abandon medical school. The housing and security meant safety for herself and potentially her family. But there would be a price. There was always a price. In exchange, Kim Tae-jun said, his voice taking on the formal tone of a man accustomed to negotiating contracts worth billions, you provide exclusive medical services to me and my associates. You maintain absolute discretion regarding all medical treatments and any business activities you might observe. You live on the estate permanently, available for emergency medical situations at any hour of day or night. Amara studied his face, seeing the intelligence and dangerous charisma that had built his empire. Your associates, she said carefully. You mean people injured in criminal activities. People who cannot go to hospitals because their wounds would raise questions. Kim Tae-jun's expression did not change. I mean people who require medical care and discretion. The nature of their injuries is not your concern. Your concern is providing the best possible treatment while maintaining complete confidentiality. The euphemisms could not hide the reality of what he was asking. She would become the personal physician to a crime syndicate, treating gunshot wounds, torture victims, and casualties of gang warfare. Her medical skills would serve violence as much as healing. I wanted to save lives, she said quietly. I spent years studying to become a doctor because I believed medicine should help people, not enable criminal enterprises. Kim Tae-jun leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes studying her face with unsettling intensity. You would be saving lives. My life. The lives of people under my protection. The lives of family members targeted by rivals. Violence exists in my world whether you treat its victims or not. Your choice is between healing those who need help and allowing them to die for the sake of moral purity. The logic was compelling and disturbing in equal measure. He was not asking her to participate in violence, only to treat its aftermath. But treating the wounded would make her complicit in conflicts she might oppose, would bind her to his criminal activities through the Hippocratic oath she still held sacred. What about legitimate medical work? She asked. Research opportunities. The chance to use my skills for conventional medicine. Kim Tae-jun smiled for the first time since beginning the negotiation. My pharmaceutical empire is completely legitimate. We fund medical research, develop new treatments, and operate clinical trials through partnerships with major universities. You would have access to cutting-edge research facilities and the opportunity to publish papers under your own name. Your criminal activities would be limited to emergency medical care for associates who cannot seek conventional treatment. The offer was seductive, a chance to complete medical school while earning more money than she had ever imagined. Access to research opportunities that could advance her career and contribute to medical knowledge. Security for herself and her family that would eliminate the constant fear that had dominated their lives for 18 months. But acceptance meant permanent entanglement with Kim Tae-jun's criminal empire. Once she began treating wounded syndicate members, once she gained knowledge of illegal activities, there would be no leaving. She would belong to the Kim family for life, bound by loyalty and shared secrets that made betrayal impossible. I need time to consider this, she said. Kim Tae-jun nodded. You have 24 hours to decide. During that time, you will remain in the estate under full protection. My security team has detected increased surveillance from rival families who believe my recent medical crisis represents weakness. Your safety cannot be guaranteed outside these walls until that threat is neutralized. As if summoned by his words, Young Min-sik appeared in the doorway with an expression of urgent concern. Sir, we have confirmed movement from Choi family operatives. 3 teams positioned around the estate perimeter. They appear to be planning a coordinated assault. Kim Tae-jun's demeanor shifted instantly from businessman to military commander. Timeline for the attack? Within the hour, based on their positioning and equipment. They believe you are still weak from your medical crisis. They do not know that Miss Brooks successfully treated your condition. The attack came 43 minutes later, announced by the sharp crack of automatic weapons fire and the shattering of reinforced glass in the estate's outer buildings. Amara found herself pressed against the floor of Kim Tae-jun's office as bullets punched through the windows, sending shards of expensive glass cascading across Persian rugs worth more than most houses. Kim Tae-jun moved with surprising agility for a man who had been dying 3 days earlier, but Amara could see the strain in his movements, the slight tremor in his hands that indicated he had not fully recovered his strength. The medical crisis had weakened him more than he wanted to admit, and his enemies had chosen their timing well. Young Min-sik coordinated the estate's defense from behind his employer's massive desk, speaking rapidly into his headset as security teams engaged the attackers throughout the grounds. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building, punctuated by shouted orders in Korean and the occasional explosion of a breaching charge. One of Kim Tae-jun's bodyguards burst through the office door, blood streaming from a wound in his shoulder. Sir, the south entrance has been breached, he reported, swaying on his feet from blood loss. We need medical attention for the wounded. Amara looked at the injured man, seeing the arterial bleeding that would lead to unconsciousness and death within minutes, if not treated immediately. Her medical training overrode every other consideration. She grabbed the first aid kit from Kim Tae-jun's desk and moved toward the bodyguard despite the ongoing gunfire. Get down, Kim Tae-jun shouted, but Amara was already applying pressure to the wound, her hands moving with practiced precision as she assessed the damage. The bullet had nicked the subclavian artery, causing dangerous bleeding but missing vital organs. I need medical supplies, she said urgently. Hemostatic gauze, pressure bandages, and 4 fluids. This man needs immediate surgery or he will bleed out. Young Min-sik spoke rapidly into his headset, ordering medical equipment brought to the office. Within minutes, estate staff arrived with supplies that Amara used to stabilize the wounded bodyguard, performing emergency surgery on Kim Taejun's office floor while bullets continued flying outside the windows. As she worked, more wounded security personnel were brought to the office. Amara treated each one with focused efficiency, saving lives even as the battle raged around them. Her medical skills proved their worth under the most extreme circumstances, demonstrating that her value to Kim Taejun extended far beyond treating rare blood disorders. The attack was repelled after 2 hours of fierce fighting, but the message was unmistakable. Kim Taejun's enemies would continue targeting anyone they perceived as important to him. By saving his life, by proving her medical worth during combat, Amara had made herself a permanent target. 3 attackers were captured alive. Young Minsik reported as estate security conducted final sweeps of the grounds. The rest were eliminated. No casualties among our personnel, thanks to Miss Brooks' medical intervention. Kim Taejun looked at Amara, who sat bloodstained and exhausted against his office wall, her clothes ruined but her hands steady as she monitored the wounded bodyguard's vital signs. In her eyes, he could see the recognition of what his world truly meant. Violence was not abstract in his universe. It was immediate, brutal, and deadly for anyone who stood too close. "You saved 5 lives today," he said quietly, "including mine, when you chose to stay and provide medical care rather than seek shelter. This is what I am offering you, Miss Brooks. The chance to save lives in a world where medical expertise means the difference between death and survival." Amara met his gaze, understanding finally settling over her like a heavy cloak. There was no moral high ground in this decision. She could treat the wounded and be complicit in violence, or she could maintain her principles and allow people to die. The choice was between compromise and powerlessness, between security and idealism. The next morning, she signed the contract that bound her to Kim Taejun for life. As Young Minsik witnessed her signature and processed the documents that made her the highest-paid personal physician in Seoul, Amara understood that she was trading one prison for another. But this cage was lined with purpose, protected by power, and offered the chance to practice medicine at the highest level. Her belongings were moved to a private wing of the estate that afternoon. The rooms were luxurious beyond anything she had ever imagined, with a fully equipped medical suite, private library, and secure communication systems that would allow her to complete her medical education through remote programs. As she unpacked her few possessions into furniture worth more than her father's annual teaching salary, Amara Brooks accepted the reality of her new existence. She belonged to Kim Taejun now, bound by contract and protected by his power. Her medical knowledge was his exclusive property, her skills devoted to preserving his life and the lives of his associates. There was no going back to the woman who had scrubbed blood from marble floors while hiding her capabilities. That person had died the moment she chose to save a dying crime boss. In her place stood Dr. Amara Brooks, personal physician to one of Seoul's most dangerous men, keeper of his secrets, and guardian of his health. She had chosen the gilded cage. Now she would learn to live within its beautiful, dangerous confines. 3 months had passed since Amara Brooks signed the contract that bound her to Kim Taejun for life, and she had discovered an unexpected truth about her gilded cage. She had begun to find peace within its luxurious confines. Her private wing of the estate had become a sanctuary where she could finally be the doctor she had always dreamed of becoming, treating complex medical cases while pursuing her delayed medical education through accelerated online programs. The transformation had been gradual but profound. Her days now revolved around meaningful medical work rather than scrubbing floors in anonymity. She treated Kim Taejun's associates with injuries that ranged from routine business mishaps to wounds that clearly resulted from violent conflicts. A construction worker with a suspicious knife wound. A pharmaceutical executive with burns that looked suspiciously like torture marks. A translator with broken ribs, and a story about a car accident that explained nothing. She had learned not to ask questions about the circumstances that brought these patients to her door. Her role was to heal, not to judge. And despite the moral compromises inherent in her position, she had found genuine satisfaction in using her medical expertise to save lives that conventional medicine would never have the opportunity to treat. Her relationship with Kim Taejun had evolved as well. shifting from the formal dynamics of employer and employee to something more complex and intimate. His recovery from the blood disorder had been complete, but he required regular monitoring to ensure the condition did not return. These medical appointments had become daily rituals that brought them together in ways that went beyond professional necessity. This morning's appointment was no different. Kim Tae-jun sat on the examination table in her private medical suite, his expensive shirt removed to allow her to listen to his heart and lungs. His physical condition was excellent, better than most men half his age, but Amara had noticed signs of stress that concerned her professional judgment. Tension in his shoulders, slight irregularities in his sleep patterns, the controlled exhaustion of a man carrying too much responsibility. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, she noted, recording numbers on his medical chart. Are you experiencing any unusual stress or anxiety? Kim Tae-jun's dark eyes met hers with the intensity that had become familiar over the past months. Nothing beyond the normal pressures of business, he replied. The pharmaceutical division is expanding into Southeast Asia, which requires careful coordination with local partners. Local partners was Kim Tae-jun's euphemism for criminal organizations in other countries, alliances that extended his influence while creating new sources of conflict and danger. Amara had learned to read between the lines of his carefully neutral language, understanding that his stress likely resulted from violent territorial disputes rather than conventional business challenges. You should consider meditation or other relaxation techniques, she suggested, helping him back into his shirt. Chronic stress can compromise immune function and increase susceptibility to the blood disorder that nearly killed you. As she spoke, Kim Tae-jun's hands stilled on his shirt buttons. His expression shifted subtly, the controlled mask he wore in business situations giving way to something more vulnerable. For a moment, he looked younger, less like the feared crime boss who commanded Seoul's underworld and more like a man haunted by mortality. I will consider your recommendation, he said quietly. But first, would you join me for dinner tonight? I have something I would like to discuss with you. The invitation was not unusual. Over the past month, their professional relationship had expanded to include shared meals and conversations that ranged far beyond medical topics. Kim Tae-jun was surprisingly well-read, with interests in philosophy, art, and medical research that made him engaging company. These dinners had become highlights of Amara's carefully structured existence within the estate. That evening, she arrived at Kim Tae-jun's private dining room to find him waiting with an expression that seemed uncharacteristically subdued. The room itself was intimate rather than formal, with a small table set for two near floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Seoul's glittering skyline. Soft lighting and classical music created an atmosphere more suited to romance than business discussion. Throughout dinner, Kim Tae-jun seemed distracted, his conversation lacking the sharp focus that characterized his usual demeanor. He ate little, drank less, and responded to her attempts at conversation with polite but distant replies. Amara recognized the signs of a man wrestling with internal conflicts, but she had learned to respect his privacy when he was not ready to share. The change came after they had finished eating and moved to the sitting area adjacent to the dining room. Kim Tae-jun had just begun to relax, settling into one of the leather chairs with a glass of wine, when his expression suddenly shifted to one of acute distress. His breathing became labored, his hands gripping the chair arms with white-knuckled intensity. Amara recognized the signs immediately. Panic attack, possibly triggered by traumatic memories. She moved to his side without hesitation, taking his pulse and speaking in the calm, professional tone she used with patients experiencing acute stress. Kim Tae-jun, look at me, she said gently. You are safe. You are in your home. Breathe slowly and deeply. As his breathing gradually returned to normal, Kim Tae-jun's eyes focused on her face with an expression she had never seen before. The controlled mask was completely gone, replaced by raw vulnerability that made him look almost fragile. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was dreaming about dying again, he said. About being helpless while my body failed and no one could save me. But in the dream, you were not there. No one was there who could help. Amara settled into the chair beside him, maintaining the professional distance that had characterized their relationship while offering the compassion that came naturally to her medical training. The dreams are normal, she said softly. Near-death experiences often create lasting psychological effects. Your mind is processing trauma. Kim Tae-jun shook his head, his dark eyes holding hers with surprising intensity. It is not just about nearly dying. It is about being powerless when medical help is needed. About watching someone you love suffer because doctors will not treat the family of a criminal. The words hung between them like a door opening onto previously hidden territory. Amara waited, understanding that Kim Tae-jun was on the verge of sharing something deeply personal, something that might explain the man beneath the dangerous reputation. "My mother died when I was 16, he said finally, his voice gaining strength as he committed to the revelation. She had a heart condition that could have been treated easily with modern medical intervention. But when she collapsed, when we rushed her to the hospital, the doctors recognized our family name. They refused to provide treatment to the wife of a known crime boss." Amara felt her chest tighten with sympathetic pain. Medical discrimination based on criminal associations was illegal but not uncommon, particularly in situations where treating certain patients might expose medical professionals to danger or legal complications. "We offered money," Kim Tae-jun continued, his hands clenching into fists as he relived the memory. "Millions of dollars for a simple cardiac procedure. But they were afraid of being associated with our family, afraid of what rival organizations might do if they helped us. So they let her die in the emergency room while I watched." The trauma explains so much about Kim Tae-jun's character. His obsessive control over medical situations. His determination to have a personal physician he could trust completely. His willingness to pay enormous sums for exclusive medical care. He was not just buying Amara's skills. He was buying insurance against the helplessness that had cost him his mother. "That is why you need to control your medical care," Amara said, understanding flooding through her. "You cannot trust conventional medicine because it failed you when you needed it most." Kim Tae-jun nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "Every doctor I hired after that was motivated by fear or greed. They treated me because they had to, not because they wanted to save my life. But you were different. You chose to save me when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. You represent something I thought was impossible." "What is that?" Amara asked softly. "Medical care motivated by genuine compassion rather than fear or profit," Kim Tae-jun replied. "Security that comes from trust rather than coercion. You make me feel less like a monster and more like a man worth saving." The vulnerability in his confession transformed something fundamental between them. Amara found herself seeing not the feared crime boss who controlled Seoul's underworld, but a man whose mother had died because of prejudice and fear, whose criminal empire had been built partly as armor against the medical discrimination that had cost him everything. Without conscious thought, she reached out and touched his hand. The contact was gentle, professional, meant to offer comfort to a patient processing trauma. But the moment her fingers brushed his skin, the air between them shifted into something electric and dangerous. Kim Tae-jun's eyes darkened as he looked down at their joined hands. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that seemed to settle in her bones. "You are mine, Amara," he said quietly. "Not just as my physician, but as the woman who saved my life and gave me something I thought I had lost forever. I do not share what belongs to me." The possession in his voice should have frightened her. Any rational woman would have pulled away, would have reminded him that their relationship was professional, that she was bound to him by contract rather than choice. But Amara found herself responding to something deeper than rationality, something that recognized the profound connection that had grown between them over months of shared dinners and intimate medical appointments. "And you are mine to heal," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. "Mine to protect and keep alive." The reciprocal claim seemed to break whatever restraint had been holding Kim Tae-jun back. He leaned closer, his free hand rising to cup her face with surprising gentleness. When he spoke, his breath was warm against her skin. "Forever," he murmured, and then his lips found hers in a kiss that sealed the transformation of their relationship from professional to irrevocably personal. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if he were giving her the opportunity to pull away. But when she responded instead of retreating, when her hand tightened on his and her lips parted beneath his, the gentleness gave way to months of suppressed desire and emotional connection. When they finally broke apart, Kim Tae-jun rested his forehead against hers, his dark eyes holding her gaze with an intensity that made her pulse race. What had begun as a contract to provide medical services had become something neither of them had anticipated. She belonged to him now in ways that went far beyond legal documents or financial obligations. She belonged to him because she chose to. And in that choice, Amara Brooks finally understood that her gilded cage had become something else entirely. It had become home. 2 weeks after Kim Tae-jun's vulnerability had transformed their relationship from professional to personal, Amara Brooks discovered that love in his world came with dangers she had never imagined. The intelligence report arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Young Min-sik with an expression that made her blood run cold. The Choi family has been conducting surveillance on you for the past month, Young Min-sik reported, spreading photographs across Kim Tae-jun's desk. They have identified your importance to Kim Tae-jun and are planning to use you as leverage against him. The surveillance photos were disturbingly detailed. Amara entering and leaving the estate's medical facility. Amara sharing dinner with Kim Tae-jun in his private quarters. Amara walking through the estate gardens during her evening exercise routine. The images told a story that would be obvious to any criminal organization. She was not just Kim Tae-jun's employee, she was someone he cared about deeply. Kim Tae-jun studied the photographs with the cold calculation of a man accustomed to evaluating threats. His dark eyes showed no emotion, but Amara could see tension in the set of his shoulders, the slight tightening of his jaw that indicated carefully controlled anger. What is their timeline? He asked quietly. Intelligence suggests they plan to move within 48 hours, Young Min-sik replied. A fake medical emergency call designed to lure Dr. Brooks away from estate security. They believe they can use her as a bargaining chip to force concessions in the territorial dispute over pharmaceutical distribution rights. The plan was elegantly simple and terrifyingly effective. Amara's medical expertise made her uniquely valuable to Kim Tae-jun, but it also made her vulnerable to enemies who understood that his feelings for her went beyond professional necessity. By kidnapping her, the Choi family could force him to choose between her safety and his business empire. We increased security around Dr. Brooks, Young Min-sik continued. Full protection detail, restricted movement, no medical calls outside the estate until the threat is neutralized. Kim Tae-jun shook his head, his expression shifting into something that reminded Amara exactly how dangerous he could be. No, he said quietly. We end this permanently. The Choi family has made the mistake of targeting what belongs to me. They need to understand that such actions have consequences that extend beyond business rivalry. Over the next 24 hours, Amara watched Kim Tae-jun transform from the vulnerable man who had shared his traumatic past into the ruthless crime boss who had built an empire through strategic violence. He coordinated with allied organizations throughout Seoul, calling in favors and activating networks that existed in the shadows of legitimate business. His pharmaceutical empire provided perfect cover for moving people and resources, while his criminal connections ensured that the Choi family's operations could be dismantled systematically. The operation began at dawn on Thursday, executed with military precision across 12 locations throughout the city. Amara learned about it only through overheard conversations and the tense efficiency of security personnel moving through the estate with urgent purpose. Kim Tae-jun himself disappeared for 18 hours, leaving her under the protection of his most trusted guards while he personally oversaw the elimination of every threat to her safety. When he returned that evening, there were subtle signs of the violence he had participated in. A small cut on his knuckles that suggested physical confrontation. The metallic scent that clung to his clothes despite his obvious attempts at cleaning. The cold, distant expression that took several hours to warm back into the man she had come to love. But the results were undeniable. Young Min-sik's final report confirmed that the Choi family's leadership had been eliminated, their business operations destroyed, and their remaining associates scattered to other cities where they no longer posed a threat. The message sent to Seoul's criminal underworld was clear. Kim Tae-jun's woman was untouchable. It is done, Kim Tae-jun told her as they sat together in his private study, the city lights twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Choi family no longer exists as an organization. No one else will make the mistake of targeting you. Amara studied his face in the soft lighting, seeing both the man who had killed for her protection and the vulnerable person who had shared his deepest trauma. She understood that accepting his love meant accepting his capacity for violence, recognizing that his darkness served protective purposes even when it horrified her moral sensibilities. "I know what you did for me," she said quietly. "I know what it cost you to eliminate those threats." Kim Tae-jun reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that had become familiar over their months together. "It cost me nothing," he replied. "Protecting you is not a burden. It is a privilege." The sincerity in his voice made something shift permanently in Amara's chest. She had spent months struggling with the moral compromises of her position, wrestling with the conflict between her medical ethics and her attraction to a dangerous man. But seeing the lengths he would go to ensure her safety, understanding that his violence was specifically calibrated to protect rather than destroy, she finally found peace with the choice she had made. A week later, Kim Tae-jun made the choice permanent. The proposal came during one of their regular dinner meetings, delivered with the same formal precision he applied to important business negotiations. But beneath his controlled demeanor, Amara could see genuine nervousness, as if her answer mattered more than any deal he had ever negotiated. "I want you to become my wife," he said, producing a ring that probably cost more than most people's houses. "Not just my personal physician, but the official partner in everything I build. The woman who stands beside me as we create something that extends beyond both our individual lives." The ring itself was stunning, a perfect diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured fire. But more important than its value was what it represented: permanent security, legal protection, and public acknowledgement of their relationship that would make her untouchable in ways that went beyond criminal intimidation. Marriage to Kim Tae-jun would grant her citizenship rights, legal protections, and access to resources that would ensure her safety even if something happened to him. It would also complete her transformation from anonymous servant to queen of a criminal empire, a position that came with both privilege and responsibility. "Yes," she said without hesitation, understanding that her heart had made the decision long before her mind caught up. "I accept." The wedding was held 6 weeks later in the estate's private chapel, a ceremony that blended traditional Korean elements with modern touches that reflected their unique relationship. Amara wore a custom gown that incorporated medical symbols into its intricate beadwork, while Kim Tae-jun's ceremonial robes featured subtle pharmaceutical industry imagery that spoke to their shared professional interests. The guest list included legitimate business associates alongside criminal organization leaders, medical professionals who had become part of Kim Tae-jun's network, and carefully selected government officials whose cooperation had been purchased through strategic donations and mutually beneficial arrangements. It was a wedding that formally announced Amara's elevation to the highest levels of Seoul's power structure. But the most meaningful moment came during their private exchange of vows, words they spoke to each other alone in Kim Tae-jun's study before the public ceremony. Here, without witnesses or formal requirements, they promised things that went beyond legal marriage. "I promise to use my medical knowledge to keep you alive and healthy for as long as we both exist," Amara said, her hands trembling slightly as she held his. "To be your anchor to humanity when the darkness of your world threatens to consume you. To love all of you, including the parts that frighten me." Kim Tae-jun's response was delivered with the intensity that had characterized every important moment in their relationship. "I promise to build a world safe enough for you to practice medicine without fear," he said, "to ensure that your brilliance is never again hidden or diminished by circumstances beyond your control. To love you with everything I am and everything I command." The legal protections that came with marriage were comprehensive. Name changes, citizenship arrangements, medical license restoration through legitimate channels, and financial structures that would ensure Amara's security regardless of what happened to Kim Tae-jun's criminal enterprises. She became Dr. Amara Kim, with credentials that would allow her to practice medicine anywhere in the world while maintaining her position as exclusive physician to Seoul's most powerful crime family. 6 months after the wedding, Amara completed her medical degree through an accelerated program funded by Kim Tae-jun's pharmaceutical empire. Her thesis on rare blood disorders was published in prestigious medical journals, establishing her reputation as a legitimate medical researcher while carefully omitting the circumstances that had led to her expertise. As she stood in Kim Tae-jun's study, holding her medical diploma, and wearing the elegant clothes of a woman whose every need was provided for. Amara thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. 18 months ago, she had been a desperate woman scrubbing blood from marble floors, hiding her medical knowledge while her family lived in fear of loan sharks. Tonight, she was Dr. Amara Kim, wife of one of Seoul's most powerful men, respected physician, published researcher, and the woman whose medical expertise had saved the life that now protected her absolutely. Her father's debt was not just cleared but forgotten. Her family relocated to luxury housing under Kim family protection. Her mother pursuing the art career she had always dreamed of with funding that would last several lifetimes. Kim Tae-jun found her there, studying her diploma with an expression of quiet satisfaction. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his lips brushing her ear as he spoke. "Any regrets about the choice you made?" he asked softly. Amara leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady heartbeat that she had saved and that now sustained their shared life. "None," she replied. "I chose to save your life, and in doing so, I saved my own." Outside their windows, Seoul glittered with possibilities. Inside their fortress of wealth and power, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances planned a future that would extend their influence across generations. There would be children, carefully protected and raised with every advantage. Medical facilities that would advance treatment of rare diseases. Philanthropic enterprises that would help families facing the kind of debt that had once destroyed her dreams. She had walked into this estate as a servant hiding her capabilities. She walked through it now as the queen of an empire built on the foundation of medical expertise and absolute devotion. The woman who had once cleaned blood from marble floors now commanded resources that could reshape the medical landscape of an entire nation. And every night, she slept peacefully in the arms of the dangerous man whose life she had saved, whose love had become the anchor that made all of it possible. In saving Kim Tae-jun, Amara Brooks had discovered that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the only choice that leads to freedom. She belonged to him completely, and he belonged to her in return. Forever secured, forever protected, forever loved.